You know what the hardest thing about starting something new is? Actually taking the leap and starting. For me, this is my first podcast ever. You know what the hardest part was? It was something that I just did. I pressed the record button. I just pressed it. I sat here for a little bit with the microphone, looking at the screen, nervous. How am I going to start this? You know why? Because if we let ourselves get stuck in thinking, we can analyze something to death. We can analyze and make checklists and think about it and talk about it forever. There's really no point where we need to start if we are pushing it off. And so here I am. And you know what? I am starting this first episode before I even have a solid name for this. I don't have a jingle. I don't have any ads. I don't even know. I have one little piece of equipment. Hello. That's my microphone. And a laptop. So, starting this off with a lesson to myself about taking the leap and getting started. My name is Sarah Kornblatt, and I am a clinical social worker with lots of different thoughts about life. I've been sharing a lot of my journey and my thoughts on LinkedIn for the past 2 years, and I decided to take the leap into podcasting. So, one of the things that has limited me on LinkedIn is that on that platform, you're supposed to keep the videos to 1 minute because people don't really, it's kind of, they're scrolling through a feed. They're not really interested in listening for longer than that. And so many of the things that I'm really passionate about, I have a lot more to say than what would just fit into 1 minute. So I'm really excited to get started on a platform that will give a longer amount of time to go into depth about certain ideas and to interview professionals and individuals with interesting experiences, um, and hoping to bring value and bring something new that doesn't exist already. And that's another one of my soapboxes. So may as well get into it now because I guess this is my podcast and I could just talk. So, some people are scared to start something like a podcast, for example, because they think, what can I add that doesn't already exist out there? Right? There's already people who are experts in that. What's different about me? And so that's something that I really try to address in the videos I do, but I'm going to address it right now too. There could be 1,000, a million experts out there, but none of them is you. Every single one of us has our own unique way of expressing ourselves, of approaching something. And forget about just having our own unique way. We have our own unique set of experiences and life circumstances that make it different. So even if today was National Self-Love Day, which is like self-love is something I'm really into, and every single podcaster in the universe talked about self-love today, there still would be something different that every person would be bringing and something unique and different that I'd be bringing. And so I guess what this podcast is now turning into is encouraging everyone to start their own podcast or let their voice be heard. But whatever, I'm just going to go with it and let this take me wherever. And when I mentioned on LinkedIn wanting to start a podcast, someone said that podcasting sometimes feels like eavesdropping. And I will say this, I already know in advance that's going to be a lot. What this might feel like, eavesdropping into my thought process and eavesdropping into, I guess, my free association of thought as ideas just follow each other. Some of the things that I'm really passionate about that I hope to be able to explore more in depth are, like I said, self-love, self-confidence, learning how to be okay with yourself where you're at, and that accepting yourself where you're at doesn't mean that you're not going to push yourself to grow. It doesn't mean that you're going to just be happy with stagnation or mediocrity. And kind of exploring that more. Another thing I'm going to want to talk about is mental health and destigmatizing mental health, mental illness, getting help. That's something I'm very, very passionate about. So as a licensed clinical social worker, I am a therapist and I do work in the field. And I'm also very transparent and open about my own mental health struggles. And so that's definitely something that I want to get more into. I think that, yes, we've come a long way as a society in regard to being more accepting and open about getting help for mental health struggles, but we can always get better. We can always learn how to be more thoughtful and mindful in how we support our friends and family, and in understanding ourselves and that process of getting help, and not feeling like it's a failure if we can't take care of whatever it is on our own and we need to go get that help. Another thing that's really important to me, look at that. I'm just like listing off my passions, but whatever. Here it is. Sarah Kornblit in the house. No, literally Sarah Kornblit in her house for months. But that's now a common, relatable, worldwide experience. Okay. There I go with my free association. So in my work as a social worker, I've been in the medical field. Started off working in a dialysis clinic for 4 years. I was in a children's hospital working on a palliative care team for 2 years. I've been, for the last 2 years, giving trainings, private practice, LinkedIn, that kind of thing. And so being that I have all this experience working with chronic illness, working with end of life, I am also very passionate about talking about the struggles that come along with chronic illnesses, and also talking about the challenges of grief and loss, and some, feeling alone and disenfranchised grief. So grief that is not validated or recognized by society. These are really, really important things to me. So as I think about moving forward with this podcast, I would love to, be focused and have different episodes devoted to different topics. Right now is just my intro, rip off the Band-Aid, get this thing started kind of thing. As I look into the technicalities of how to even host this, where to put it, all that. But I'm not going to let that stuff stop me. I'm not going to research this to death. I'm going to take this recording that I'm making and I'm going to get it up there somewhere. I'm not going to let those things stand in my way or be excuses to not get this done. Putting yourself out there in a podcast form, I think, can be intimidating, scary. And I'm just speaking from my own experience of this moment, that it can be it's scary and intimidating. On LinkedIn, the videos that I do are very brief, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes max, if I'm interested in losing the focus of my audience. On a podcast where listeners are anticipating a longer episode, and therefore I have the ability to keep talking and sharing more and more in depth, it's definitely letting people in to another part of myself that is not exposed on LinkedIn. It's just different, right? Because when you're sharing for longer and you're sharing more in depth, there are more stories, more insights, more vulnerability that comes out, because it really turns into more of a conversation, and more exploration. And so, am I nervous? Yeah, I am. I'll be honest. It is a level of vulnerability that I haven't even put out there. But at the same time, I'm excited. There are a lot of things that, like I've said, that I'm really, really passionate about. And so I'm excited about having a platform to talk more about them and to meet people who are passionate about these things or about, whatever. They're, the possibilities are endless, right? When it comes to who I could interview, topics that could be discussed. And so, honestly, that's quite thrilling. And when I think about frequency, I'm hopeful that I can do weekly. That's my goal. That's like the podcaster gold standard, I guess. But I'm not going to hold myself to that for right now, because sometimes when we create a really high standard that might not be doable, given your circumstances, then we can set ourselves up for failure, or we can fall into an all or nothing mindset, which is absolutely not what I want. I want to be able to give myself the chance and permission to sustain this and to make this work. And so, if you've made it through this far and you're interested in continuing along for the journey, thank you. That really means a lot to me. It really does. Um, it's this is a new endeavor, and thank you for those who have cheered me on and encouraged me to get this started. And thank you to those who we're meeting for the first time. I would love to connect. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, Sarah Kornblit, LCSW. And I'll, part of my technical doings, I know I'll make an email address for this podcast. And one day that will be the way we can be in touch. But thank you, and stay tuned. And I'm excited to see where this journey goes. And thanks for coming along for the ride. Bye.